If you've ever found yourself just staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., you know insomnia is way more than just being tired. It's this frustrating, maddening cycle that can feel absolutely impossible to break. But what if you could actually retrain your brain for sleep? Okay, let's get into it. Because today we're breaking down the science-backed method that does just that: cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or what's known as CBT-I. All right, so here's the game plan. We're going to start by looking at that vicious cycle of insomnia, and then I'll introduce you to the CBTI solution. After that, we'll get into the nitty-gritty. First, retraining your sleep behaviors, and second, how to tame what we call the insomnia brain. And finally, we'll see how all these skills come together to build a real, lasting foundation for better sleep. You know, for more than a third of adults, insomnia is a really frustrating reality. It usually starts with something simple: a big deadline at work, a personal issue, something that messes up our sleep for a few nights. But for so many people, that short-term problem somehow spirals into this chronic, relentless struggle night after night. So why does that happen, right? Why does a sleep problem stick around long after that initial stressor is a distant memory? Well, the answer is in this really simple but incredibly powerful framework that explains exactly how a few bad nights can turn into a chronic condition. It's called Spielman's 3P model. So first, you have predisposing factors. Maybe you're just naturally a light sleeper. Then, a precipitating event kicks it all off, like a crazy week at work. But here's the most crucial part. The one that turns a bad week into years of insomnia, it's the perpetuating factors. These are all the unhelpful habits and beliefs we pick up because we're not sleeping well, like staying in bed for hours trying to catch up. And guess what? This final step is exactly what CBTI is designed to dismantle. So how in the world do we break that cycle? Well, we have to move from just trying to cope with insomnia to actively treating its root causes. And that's where cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia comes into play. Think of it less like a magic pill and more like an active, skills-based training program for your entire sleep system. CBTI is a proven first-line treatment that goes straight for those perpetuating factors we just talked about. It's a therapy with a couple of key parts that tackle both the unhelpful things we do, like taking long naps, and the anxious thoughts we have about sleep itself. Now, this is a really important point. This is not about forcing yourself to sleep. You can't do it. In fact, trying harder only makes it worse. The real goal of CBTI is to just get out of your own way, to remove all the obstacles that are getting in the way of your body's natural, powerful drive to sleep. Okay, let's get practical and talk about the first part: retraining your behaviors. This is all about breaking that mental connection you've built between your bed and feeling frustrated, and instead reestablishing your bed as a place for restful, solid sleep. And the number one tool for this is the sleep log. I know, it might seem a little basic, but it is so powerful. For a week or two, you just track everything: when you get into bed, about how long it takes to fall asleep, and how much time you're actually sleeping. This isn't just about record keeping. You're gathering crucial data to figure out one key number. And that key number is your sleep efficiency. Basically, the percentage of time you spend in bed that you are actually asleep. So, for example, if you're in bed for 9 hours, but you're only sleeping for about 7 of them, your efficiency is pretty low. The whole goal of this part of CBTI is to get that number way up by perfectly matching the time you spend in bed to the time you're truly sleeping. And this leads to some core practical changes that might feel a little weird at first. Instead of lying in bed feeling frustrated, you actually get up. Your bed becomes a place reserved for sleep and only sleep. And this one is a game changer. You stick to a consistent wake-up time, yes, even on weekends, to make your body's natural sleep-wake rhythm as strong as possible. But look, insomnia isn't just about what you do, it's so much about what you think. And that brings us to the cognitive side of CBTI, which gives you the tools you need to finally quiet that racing, noisy mind at night. We call this the insomnia brain. You know what I'm talking about. It's that noisy, hyper-alert mind that just switches on the second your head hits the pillow. It's filled with worries like, what if I can't fall asleep? Or how am I ever going to function tomorrow? CBTI has specific techniques to challenge this unhelpful and, frankly, exhausting state of mind. One of the main tools for this is the thought record. It's a systematic way to put those late-night anxious thoughts on trial. Let's just walk through this example here. The situation: you're lying awake at 2 a.m. The automatic thought is a catastrophe. I'll mess everything up tomorrow. But instead of just accepting that thought as fact, the process makes you become a detective. You have to look for cold, hard evidence against that thought. And the evidence is usually right there in front of you. I've had insomnia for a year and I haven't been fired. I always seem to get through the day. It's all about separating the anxious feeling from the actual reality. And this process helps you create a more balanced, realistic statement. So, instead of a catastrophe, you land on a coping thought that's actually true. I don't feel my best, but the truth is, I always make it through. It's a simple shift, but it completely diffuses the anxiety that fuels insomnia. You're moving from panic to perspective. So, when you combine these behavioral changes with these new cognitive skills, you're not just getting some temporary fix. You are fundamentally changing your entire relationship with sleep and building skills that are going to last you a lifetime. And that's really the key difference between CBTI and something like sleeping pills. Sure, medications can give you some temporary symptomatic relief, but CBTI actually addresses the root causes. It doesn't just put a Band-Aid on the problem, it empowers you with the skills to solve it yourself, which leads to sustained improvement long after the therapy is over. So, when you put it all together, you can really see why CBTI is so incredibly effective. It works because it targets the underlying causes, not just the symptoms. It creates long-term, durable change without the side effects of medication. And maybe most importantly, it gives you a toolkit of self-management skills, which is why so many people actually prefer it. Ultimately, CBTI reframes the entire approach. It asks you to stop fighting a nightly battle for sleep and instead start a proactive training program to achieve it. So the final question really is, are you ready to make that shift?